Vin Diesel stands among Hollywood's most cherished stars, recognized not only for his blockbuster performances, but for his modest nature and charitable spirit. He's consistently maintained that achievement means nothing unless it's distributed among others. Yet, beyond the glittering premieres and celebrity events, most people remain unaware that he quietly allocated part of his fortune toward constructing a medical facility, a place established on a single fundamental belief: every person deserves respect, regardless of their economic circumstances. One particular day, driven by intuition and a series of troubling unsigned letters, Vin reached a conclusion. He would personally inspect the hospital, concealing his true identity. No bodyguards, no luxury vehicles, just weathered clothing, faded denim, and an unassuming entry through the main entrance. He anticipated discovering compassion, competence, and care. Instead, what he witnessed left him deeply disturbed. The emergency ward was controlled by a pompous physician, someone who exploited his authority, degraded patients, and determined treatment worthiness based on appearance, race, or financial status. This doctor remained oblivious that among those he was mistreating stood the very person who owned the entire facility. Vin observed everything silently, hands trembling with anger, muscles tensed, heart aching. But how much longer could he remain quiet? And what would unfold when reality was finally revealed? Stick around until the conclusion, because this tale, much like the man at its center, contains deeper layers than initially apparent. Oh, and before we proceed, let us know your location. We enjoy hearing from you, and yes, we genuinely read each response. It was an overcast morning in Atlanta, the type where clouds sit low and humidity builds before midday. Outside St. Mary's Regional Medical Center, vehicles moved slowly past weathered pavements while early workers hurried into structures, gripping tepid coffee. Among all this activity, a figure rested quietly on a bench across the street, face hidden beneath a faded gray hood. His denim was worn, footwear was marked with use, and a modest bag sat beside his feet. Pedestrians paid him no attention. He appeared disconnected from the realm of scheduled appointments and social standing. To them, he seemed like just another unfortunate individual, perhaps ill, perhaps without shelter, perhaps overlooked entirely. What nobody realized, not the medical staff walking past, not the guard at the entrance, not the clerk checking time. Inside was that beneath that covering sat Vin Diesel. He wasn't present as a celebrity today. No luxury transport, no assistance. Simply a man returning to a structure he had quietly erected years earlier with a single commitment. Regardless of ethnicity, wealth, or history, this location would treat everyone with human dignity. The concept emerged from loss. Years before, Vin's mother, Dolores Sinclair, a dignified black woman who raised him in a humble Brooklyn home, had collapsed while visiting family in Charleston. They brought her to a nearby private facility, but lacking coverage, she was instructed to wait indefinitely. For 3 hours, she remained in that reception area with labored breathing, while well-dressed white individuals were promptly assisted. Nobody acknowledged her presence. Nobody offered aid. 2 days afterward, she died from what medical examiners labeled preventable complications. Vin never forgot. Not the sterile quiet of that waiting space, not the blank expression of the staff member who had dismissed his mother. So when fame arrived, bringing wealth and influence, Vin utilized it differently than most. He didn't simply purchase properties or automobiles. He supported medical centers in neglected neighborhoods. He covered surgical costs without recognition. Eventually, he established St. Mary's, named for his grandmother, a nurse who once declared, "A civilization's character is revealed by how it cares for the sick." Recently, however, something had changed. Vin began receiving correspondence, not from media or admirers, but anonymous messages, some printed, others handwritten, arriving discreetly through unofficial channels. They only prioritize wealthy white patients now. If you're black and appear poor, they treat you like a threat. Dr. Hamilton instructed a young mother to take her ill infant elsewhere, said this facility wasn't meant for her type. Initially, Vin assumed these must be exaggerated, perhaps misunderstandings, but as letters accumulated, his concern deepened. Something was fundamentally wrong. That's why he came here, not as the founder, not as the administrator, but as an ordinary person in casual wear, using the name Victor Sinclair, honoring his mother's memory. He entered through the automatic entrance, the reception area buzzing with typical hospital activity, telephone rings, overhead announcements, quiet conversations. A young white receptionist glanced up, inflating a gum bubble, and inquired, "Name?" "Victor Sinclair," he responded, keeping his voice low but steady. "Insurance?" "I'll handle payment directly," Vin stated. She examined him closely, noting his hoodie, his complexion, the facial hair on his chin. "It's going to be quite a wait," she mumbled, passing him a clipboard with paperwork and a number. "Sit there." Vin acknowledged and moved toward the seating area. Chairs were arranged beneath a television broadcasting daytime programming. An elderly black gentleman sat by the window, palm pressed to his chest, looking exhausted. Next to him, a young Hispanic woman comforted a restless toddler who coughed in brief, harsh spells. Across the space, a man in an expensive suit entered, hair perfectly styled, expensive watch gleaming under fluorescent lighting. "Mr. Harrington," the receptionist announced, voice suddenly courteous, even welcoming. "Dr. Hamilton is prepared for you." She rose to personally escort him inside. Vin watched this scene unfold, jaw clenched tightly. Then chaos erupted. The young mother approached the counter, terror evident in her voice. "Please, my daughter. She's struggling to breathe. She's burning with fever." The receptionist remained focused elsewhere. "You'll need to wait." "Please," the woman pleaded, arms shaking, as she cradled her baby girl. "She's deteriorating." "Ma'am," the receptionist snapped, "this isn't an urgent care center. You can visit Grady Memorial if it's truly serious. No compassion, no sense of urgency." Vin looked around. A security officer leaned against a wall, absorbed in his phone. A nurse passed by, eyes averted. Nobody reacted. Then came the sound of expensive shoes on linoleum. Dr. Hamilton had appeared, mid-40s, tall, white, with angular features and piercing eyes. He wore an immaculate white coat over designer pants and carried a steel coffee mug like an accessory. The moment he noticed the young mother blocking the corridor, he scowled. "Move aside," he commanded coldly. "My child needs medical attention," she responded. "She can't breathe properly." Hamilton's gaze narrowed. "And you believe I'm going to abandon everything for that? Transport her to the downtown emergency room. This hospital isn't child care, but—" "Listen, lady," he hissed. "You're not alone in having difficulties. If I treated every minor illness like a crisis, we'd face bankruptcy." He turned and departed. The mother sank back into her seat, weeping. Vin's hands clenched in his lap. He inhaled deeply, stood, and approached the counter. "That child requires assistance," he said calmly. The receptionist glared. "Sit down." "That gentleman there," Vin continued, indicating the elderly man still holding his chest, "is experiencing pain, yet you're allowing people to bypass others simply because they wear expensive clothing." "Security!" the receptionist called out. "Remove him." Vin remained motionless. "You handle people like statistics," he said. "But these represent human lives." Finally, after nearly 60 minutes, a nurse called, "Victor Sinclair." Vin followed her down the corridor into room 14. Dr. Hamilton was present, typing on his device. He didn't raise his head. Symptoms? Fatigue, muscle aches, chest discomfort. "Uh-huh," the doctor muttered, still scrolling. He eventually looked up, assessed. "Vin briefly, using any substances? Pain medication, performance enhancers?" "No," Vin answered. "Ever been evaluated for cardiac issues?" "No." "Not unexpected." The doctor smirked, retrieved a stethoscope, barely touched it to Vin's chest before scribbling on a prescription pad. "You're fine. Take ibuprofen. Go home. Vin remained seated. That's the extent of it? You're not dying. You'll survive. Some of us have legitimate patients to examine. Vin studied him. You didn't assess anything. Not my blood pressure. Not my medical history. You didn't even inquire about family conditions. Dr. Hamilton leaned back. Look, buddy, I've been practicing for 15 years. I recognize someone faking when I see them. Now, unless you're hemorrhaging internally, I recommend you leave. Vin stood. His expression stayed calm, but his eyes had grown cold. Thank you, doctor. I'll certainly relay your professional assessment. He moved toward the exit. Next time, the doctor added arrogantly, try dressing like someone worth examining. Vin paused at the doorway. You might want to remember this face, he said. You'll encounter it again? He exited without another word. In the hallway, a nurse brushed past and whispered, Sir, I apologize. It's not just you. He behaves this way with everyone who appears different. We can't speak out. They retaliate against us. Vin looked at her. Who retaliates? Management, she said, voice barely audible. He attracts major contributors. They shield him. Even when he makes statements, racist statements, she swallowed hard. We attempt to help, but it seems futile. Vin nodded slowly, the impact of her words settling heavily in his chest. He didn't respond further. He didn't need to. Because what they didn't understand, what nobody in this building recognized, was that the man they judged by his casual attire didn't just possess a name. He had the authority to dismantle everything and reconstruct it properly, and that moment was approaching faster than they could possibly imagine. Vin walked through St. Mary's corridors with slow, intentional steps. His hands remained tucked in, his hoodie pockets. But his mind raced, reviewing every moment, every insult, every display of indifference, every word saturated with bias. The structure that once symbolized compassion had transformed into something else, something empty. It wasn't solely Dr. Hamilton. That individual was merely a symptom. The illness ran deeper, embedded in the infrastructure, carved into procedures, safeguarded by silence and polished presentations. Vin made his way to a side passage leading to the staff break room, an area he remembered from the original architectural plans. As he rounded the corner, he stopped near a partially open door. Inside, he heard voices, low, tired, cautious. Nurses, he determined from the tone. He moved, closer without being detected. He humiliated another patient today, one voice said. Female, weary. Black woman came in bleeding from her leg. He called it cosmetic. Another voice, male, replied bitterly. You object. They transfer you to night shifts. He's untouchable. Administration adores him because he's efficient. Efficient? Someone else hissed. He avoids tests, doesn't examine properly, dismisses pain like people are deceiving him, only if they're black or poor or both. There was extended silence, then a whisper. I despise that this has become normal. Vin couldn't tolerate it anymore. He entered the room. The staff froze. 4 nurses stared at him, confused, not recognizing him without the Hollywood polish. One of them, a black woman in her 40s, stood defensively. Can we assist you, sir? Vin met each of their eyes, then said quietly, I heard everything, and I need to understand more. The younger nurse squinted. Who are you? He didn't answer immediately. Instead, he closed the door behind him and spoke, softly. I need to comprehend what's occurring in this hospital from people who experience it daily. Not the reports, not the glossy statistics, the truth. One nurse, a Hispanic man named Miguel according to his badge, stepped forward. You're not management. They never visit here. Vin smiled wearily. I'm not them, but I promise this conversation is confidential. The older nurse, who introduced herself as Erica, hesitated. If you're genuinely here to listen, then listen carefully, she said, voice steady. Dr. Hamilton isn't just arrogant. He's dangerous. He ignores symptoms. He mocks patients of color. He instructs nurses to overlook people who don't appear serious. And if we object, we face silence, warnings, reduced hours. He told a Haitian family last week to return to whatever country they came from because they couldn't understand the intake paperwork. Miguel added. He considers anyone without insurance a fraud, Erica concluded, and he's protected because he brings in major donors and makes everything appear successful on paper. He's quick, cold, efficient. Administration loves him. Vin nodded, absorbing every detail. The situation was worse than he imagined. This wasn't just cultural indifference. This was systematic neglect disguised as professional competence. "Thank you," he said quietly. "Truly." He turned to leave, then paused at the door. "You'll understand why I'm asking this later, but if you had an opportunity to change all of this, would you assist?" They exchanged glances, and Miguel was first to respond. Without hesitation, Vin nodded again. "Then prepare yourselves." He left the break room, walked directly to the elevator, and rode to the 5th floor where administrative offices were located. When he stepped out, a suited secretary looked up, surprised to see someone in casual wear. "May I help you?" she asked, clearly skeptical. "I need to speak with the chief administrator," Vin said calmly. "Do you have an appointment?" "No, but he'll want to hear from me." The woman lifted the phone with a sigh, mumbled something into the receiver, and after a long pause gestured toward a door down the hall. "Third on the right. He's between meetings." Vin entered without knocking. The man behind the desk, Gregory Langford, chief administrator, looked up sharply. "Excuse me?" "We need to talk," Vin said, closing the door behind him. "I don't recall scheduling." "No, you didn't, but that's irrelevant." Langford raised an eyebrow, already irritated. "And you are?" Vin stepped forward slowly, removed the hood from his head, and for the first time revealed himself. "My name is Vin Diesel. I'm the founder and primary financier of this hospital. I'm the person who constructed this place with the promise that every patient, regardless of skin color or income, would receive dignified treatment. And I've just spent the past 2 hours witnessing the complete opposite." Langford paled, leaned back in his chair, attempting to conceal the panic in his expression. "Mr. Diesel, if you had known I was coming, I would have been escorted through the back entrance, offered coffee, and given a curated tour of whatever you wanted me to see. But I didn't come for publicity. I came for truth, and I discovered it." Langford fumbled with papers on his desk. "Dr. Hamilton is one of our top physicians. He sees more patients than anyone else. He maintains low costs. His statistics are flawless." Vin's eyes darkened. "And how many people does he harm to achieve those statistics? How many patients does he ignore? Insult? Misdiagnose because of their skin color or the shoes they wear?" Langford began to respond, but Vin raised his hand to stop him. "Let me be clear. I witnessed him humiliate a black mother pleading for help for her daughter. I watched him dismiss a man experiencing chest pains. I endured the condescension, the neglect, the racism, and I heard from your staff that this isn't new, that complaints go unanswered, that your team fears speaking out because you protect him." Langford had no response. Vin leaned forward. "That ends today." Within minutes, Langford had called an emergency meeting. They assembled in the main conference room. Langford, his assistant, the director of patient relations, and 3 board members. Vin stood at the head of the table as they entered, puzzled by the sudden urgency. Then Dr. Hamilton walked in, pristine white coat, smugness intact. He looked around. "What's this about?" His eyes fell on Vin. Confusion, then recognition. "Wait, is that—" Langford stood. "Dr. Hamilton, meet Mr. Vin Diesel, founder of this hospital." Silence dropped like thunder. Hamilton laughed nervously. "Well, this is unexpected. If I'd known you were here, I would have—" "You would have concealed who you are," Vin interrupted. "Just like you hide it from patients every day. But I saw you. I heard you, and now so will they. Vin retrieved a small voice recorder, placed it on the table, and pressed play. The room filled with Hamilton's voice, arrogant, cruel, mocking. "This isn't a daycare. Take your sick kid to Grady. You think you get seen first because you cried? Please. If we treated every broke person like royalty, we'd be bankrupt." It continued relentlessly. Nobody looked up. When it stopped, Vin said, "That's what you're protecting. That's what your numbers are built on." Hamilton attempted to stand indignantly. "This is ridiculous." "You're finished here," Vin said, cold and clear. "You can't—" "I just did." Security was already outside the door. Vin turned to the board. "And if anyone here believes protecting that kind of behavior is good business, you can follow him out." The room remained still. Vin nodded once, then said, "Now, let's discuss how we repair what's broken." He wasn't just reclaiming a hospital. He was about to initiate a revolution. The atmosphere in the conference room remained heavy with tension long after Dr. Hamilton was removed. Nobody spoke. Not the administrator, not the board members, not even the assistant who had been documenting, until her pen stopped moving mid-sentence. Vin remained standing, arms crossed, gaze unwavering. The recording had revealed more than one person's cruelty. It had exposed a culture of quiet compliance that allowed prejudice to hide behind professionalism and statistics. When Vin finally spoke, his voice wasn't angry, but it was firm, deliberate, like someone carefully sculpting stone to reveal something truer beneath. "I didn't construct this place to be a business," he began. "I built it because I lost my mother in a waiting room. I built it because nobody should be asked for a credit card before being asked if they're okay. I built it because I believed we could do better than what the world has grown accustomed to. But what I witnessed today, and what your own staff has confirmed, is that somewhere along the way this hospital stopped being a sanctuary for the sick and started becoming a showroom for people who could afford the illusion of care." He paused, scanning the room, challenging anyone to look away. Nobody did. "We are going to change that. Not tomorrow, not after several committee meetings. Right now." The administrator, Gregory Langford, finally cleared his throat. His voice, cautious. "Mr. Diesel, we understand your concerns, and I assure you this board is committed to excellence." Vin shook his head. "Don't offer me another mission statement. I want action. Here's what's going to happen. First, every single department will undergo an independent audit of patient treatment patterns. Every race, gender, income level. I want raw data. If anyone's been turned away, skipped over, or talked down to, I want to know." One board member shifted uncomfortably, but said nothing. "Second," Vin continued, "we're launching an anonymous reporting system, not one that gets funneled to HR and buried under paperwork. One that goes straight to an independent ethics committee staffed by people who don't have stock in protecting reputations. Real people who listen." He took a breath. "Third, and most important, every member of this staff, from the security desk to the surgeons, will go through mandatory empathy and equity training. Not just a 2-hour seminar, ongoing real-world application. We're going to rebuild our culture from the inside out." Langford adjusted his tie, his face pale but resigned. "And if they refuse?" Vin's expression hardened. "Then they can work somewhere else. I don't care how many degrees hang on their wall or how big their donor list is. No one is above accountability." For the first time, one of the nurses, Erica, the one from the break room, stepped through the door, having been summoned by Vin moments earlier. She stood just inside the threshold, uncertain, until he turned to her and smiled. "Would you come in, please?" She entered, nervously clasping her hands in front of her. Vin looked at the room. "This is Erica. She's worked here longer than most of you combined. She's seen the system fail in ways we can't measure on charts. From now on, she's going to be one of the people helping lead our internal review. Because if we're going to fix this, we start by listening to those we've ignored." Erica blinked, stunned, then slowly nodded. The room was silent again, but this time not from fear. There was a different weight now. Something shifting. Vin turned back to the group. I'm not looking for a hospital that looks good on a brochure. I want a hospital my mother would have felt safe in. One where that young black mother I saw today doesn't have to beg to be heard. One where no man clutches his chest in silence because no one believes him. That's the place I intended to build. And starting today, that's the place we become. Over the following weeks, change moved through St. Mary's like fresh air. Word spread quickly and quietly that something significant had happened. That the man in the hoodie wasn't a patient at all, but the one who signed the checks and breathed life into the vision. Some staff left, unwilling to adapt. Others, like Erica and Miguel, were promoted into leadership roles they'd long deserved. The anonymous reporting system began receiving submissions within the first hour of launch, some minor, others devastating, all of them taken seriously. The culture began to shift. Patients noticed it first. The way nurses looked them in the eye, the way doctors stopped to ask genuine questions, the way no one was turned away for looking tired or scared or poor. The woman who had been shamed in the lobby with her baby girl returned days later. This time she was met by a pediatrician before she even reached the front desk. Her daughter received treatment, and she was given a seat, a bottle of water, and for the first time in a long time, a sense of peace. The elderly man who had clutched his chest was called in for follow-up. Turns out he had early signs of heart failure. They caught it in time. Even the break room felt different. Laughter returned. Fear receded, and in staff meetings people started speaking up without looking over their shoulders first. 3 weeks later, Vin returned. No hoodie this time. He walked through the main doors quietly. No cameras, no announcement. He nodded at the receptionist, who now smiled at every person who entered, and strolled through the corridors that once made his stomach turn. In the pediatric wing, he paused near a mural painted by local children, a bright, colorful image of hands of all sizes and shades holding one another. He stood there a moment, lost in thought, until a small voice caught his attention. "Excuse me, sir." He turned to see a young boy, maybe 6 or 7, wearing a superhero t-shirt 2 sizes too big and holding a juice box. The boy looked up with wide eyes. "Are you Vin Diesel?" Vin smiled, crouched to the boy's level. "Yeah, that's me." The boy hesitated, then grinned. "My mom said this hospital's better now because of you." Vin gently ruffled the boy's curly hair. "Well, it's better because of people who care. Like your mom, like the nurses and doctors who are here for the right reasons?" The boy nodded. "They were really nice to my sister. She had an ear thing. They didn't make her cry." Vin felt emotion rise in his throat. He looked around the hallway. The light, the warmth, the feeling that something was finally whole again. "That's good," he said softly. "That's exactly how it should be." As the boy skipped away, Vin stood, walked slowly toward the front doors, and turned for one last look. The sun had broken through the gray clouds outside, casting golden light across the floor, and in that light, the hospital he'd once feared had become, once more, the place he dreamed it could be. Not perfect, but honest, human, and full of hope. He didn't need applause. He didn't need headlines. He just needed to know that someone like his mother, walking in from the street in pain, wearing tired clothes and carrying a heavy past, would be seen not as a problem, but as a person worth everything. And in that quiet, unremarkable moment, Vin Diesel finally exhaled.